Welcome everyone to Touching Base. I'm your host, Eric Arnold. Today, I'm going to be joined by my friends Andrew Naw and Andy Enck, and we have the pleasure of being with local legend and radio extraordinaire Pete Medhurst, who's going to be answering some local sports questions. How you guys doing tonight?
That's right. How you guys doing?
All right. As I said, we've got Mr. Medhurst with us, and we are so excited to have you on our show. There's really nothing you haven't done in this area as far as broadcasting. I feel like I've heard you on every radio station and covering every single sport, specifically with Navy play-by-play. I've also heard you, talking with the Junkies a handful of times. I've heard you on Sports Talks 980 a handful of times. I know that's currently, one of your gigs from 3 to 7. And it seems that even today you were posting stuff on Twitter from the racetrack. So you've got a pretty busy schedule going on. So I guess my first question, before we even get going, how you've often been described as the hardest working guy in radio. And so I don't know, everything seems to be sports involved. Where did your passion for sports come from? And what drives that?
It's the only thing I've ever wanted to do since I was 5 years old. So I've gotten lucky. I mean, right out of high school, Dave Johnson, who's the voice of DC United and the Wizards, gave me a job in Annapolis right after I graduated high school. I mean, it was, between my 17 and 18-year-old years. And I've been doing it ever since. Had some good breaks along the way. We've all had bad breaks along the way, but to be able to, I've never had to venture far from home. 5 years on the Eastern Shore, they allowed me to create my own all sports station over there in 1990 when I was 20 years old. That was an interesting excursion. That station's still on the air today, the home of the Delmarva Shorebirds of single A baseball. And, for 2 years I went to Virginia Beach to run a radio station down there, and otherwise I've been back home ever since. So to be able to do everything that I've wanted to do and pretty much be able to do it from right here at home, without question, I've been one of the most fortunate people, in this industry. Great family support from my grandparents who raised me, give me a tape recorder when I was 5 so I could sit in front of the TV and act like I was Pat Summerall broadcasting games. But, my wife and my kids have been unbelievably supportive, and her extended family, they've just been amazing to me through the years. And fortunately, once I was able to catch on with, 106.7 The Fan several years ago, just doing updates and stuff and hosting on a part-time basis, our company then bought the Team 980.
Right.
So, Chris and I have been very fortunate to latch on as the afternoon drive team on that station, which is the home of Maryland football, amongst other things.
Very familiar, yeah.
The Washington football team. So very fortunate. And like I said, to be able to do it at home, I'm not, a couple hundred miles away in another
pretending
state.
To be a local fan of the team.
Right.
Right.
Hey, you're voice of South Dakota high school football. All right.
Right.
So.
Well, I think you've obviously earned that. That reputation of being the hardest working guy, and even giving, folks like us just, some time and graciously doing it. I know we appreciate it. Your ability to do it. That's got to stand out to anyone you've ever worked with. But you spoke about Washington football team. I know one of our guys wants to ask you a couple questions about the upcoming season with them.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. I'm, I guess, our resident football head. All the guys are knowledgeable, but I can talk a lot about football. With Washington football team, they got a lot of ascending young players and a lot of key positions, right? Probably top 10, if not top 5 defensive line, young and kind of ascending offensive line. Logan Thomas, Scary Terry, some of these, skill position players that are doing a lot of stuff. What's the ceiling for the Washington football team this year? Dak is back, and for the Cowboys, obviously the race for the NFC East looks a little bit different than last year. But is Washington somebody that's going to contend for the NFC East title? What are their playoff chances, et cetera?
I think with the defense that they have, I don't think there's any question they have the opportunity to compete. That depth is really good, especially up front. It's a little weak at linebacker. The secondary appears to have more talent than maybe ever before in it, which is a pleasant surprise, without question. Offensively, look, let's face it, we know Ryan Fitzpatrick's MO. There's going to be some good days. There's going to be some bad days. Last year in Miami, he was having a lot more. Last year he was having a lot more good days than he was having bad days, and inexplicably they took him out. He was leading them to the playoffs. They missed the playoff by one game, and I think had they left him in there, I think that club had a chance to make the playoffs at least. Not that they were going to do a lot of damage when they got there, but I thought he was robbed of maybe his best opportunity to make the postseason with that club. So I think you've got a hungry quarterback. I think you have emerging offensive talent. Obviously, I did a couple of games with Antonio Gibson in it in college. I know his talent level. You add Curtis Samuel to what was already a really good Terry McLaurin. You add Adam Humphries, and now all of a sudden your wide receiver position looks even deeper as well. You mentioned Logan Thomas, his ascension last year under Pete Hainer, maybe one of the greatest individual position coaching jobs we've ever seen. Taking a guy that had really been struggling chasing that position and turned him into virtually a Pro Bowl caliber tight end with the numbers that he put up last year. Biggest questions, as always, with any team: offensive line. Will they hold up? Will they be able to keep that group together? Sam Cosmi so far looks the part at right tackle. He's only going to get better. Cornelius Lucas over at Charles Leno competing over at left tackle. Likely Leno to win the job. Leno had beaten him out in Chicago when they were both there in the first place. So you're cautiously optimistic about them maybe being the closest team to a complete team in the NFC East. And I'm not sure nobody in the NFC East is a complete team. Dallas is still figuring it out defensively. Micah Parsons, tremendous addition, going to help them considerably, but they need more personnel in terms of quantity as well as quality. But they may be, if Dak can actually play, they just had an MRI to make sure his shoulder's fine and stuff like that. So that concerns you a little bit. They may be the mid-'80s version of the San Diego Chargers because they're going to be able to put up points. You're going to have to score points to beat them. They're not going to have the defense to stop you. The Giants have a defense. They have questions on offense, certainly a quarterback. And we're not really sure what the Eagles are going to be with a new head coach. Right. Jalen Hurts, young quarterback. Let's face it, the guy, though, has been a winner everywhere he's been. So can he do it now on the professional level? We've seen it at Alabama and Oklahoma. The credentials certainly are there. They've got a lot of holes around him that they've got to fill in before they're a contender in the division. So certainly you think Washington's got a chance to be in that 10, 11 win range, albeit against a much better schedule and a much better group of quarterbacks than they faced last year when that defense at times looked like it was on the way to becoming a really good defense.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said, especially with Dallas. They bring in Dan Quinn, and I think some people are expecting Legion of Boom, part 2, and I don't think they're there yet. Just being short of talent.
Does he have Cam Chancellor?
No, right, or Earl Thomas,
Bobby Wagner.
That team was historically bad on defense last year.
Yeah. So I agree they're a bit away, and I think you're right on the head with the Giants and the Eagles. I think they have some answers in some places, particularly the Eagles have some good guys in the trenches, and the defense for the Giants come along. But I think they have as many questions also. You touched on the quarterback situation in Washington. I grew up in New York. I'm a Jets fan, sometimes regrettably. I've seen the Ryan Fitzpatrick movie play out. And I agree with you. I think he's capable, right? And we've seen him do it in a couple of different places. He looked good in Tampa for a spell. He looked good in Miami. He looked good for year one with the Jets, which to look good with the Jets that's a skill.
I think he won 10 games with the Jets, didn't he?
Yeah, he's exactly right. They probably should have made the playoffs. But then, year two, the sequel, as I called it earlier, that kind of things kind of fell apart there. And like that consistency, I think with Fitzpatrick, it's a consistency issue. Also, my question kind of is, sorry, I'm kind of rambling, but, they have the capability now. They have a chance now. I think he can be competitive. I think if that consistency there, they can win now. What's the future at quarterback for Washington?
I think the future is probably in college somewhere or playing for another team, to be honest with you. If Fitz plays well this year, maybe you bring him back for another year. I mean, that's the beauty of a 1-year, $10 million deal.
For sure.
If it works out, great. Maybe you bring him back for another year, and Taylor Heineke continues to be your insurance policy.
Yeah.
But the future. Is the future next year? Is the future 2023? At some point, you've got to turn the page and get younger at the position. Heineke's doing some things right now in the first preseason game that mirrored what he did against Tampa. There's also some practices right now where he's not been as sharp, and you see some of the reasons why he wasn't in the league until they needed an emergency quarterback. When everybody saw Denver panic last year, losing all their guys because they all came up either positive or contact tracing for COVID. So it's a tremendous story. If he sticks, great. If he ends up being their quarterback for 3 or 4 years after Fitz, fantastic. But I mean, Tom Brady's showing you right now that you can play at 42 and 43. If Fitz has a good year and looks like he's a quote fit in the system, then maybe you bring him back for another season. The problem is, if you're good, you're not going to be in the Sam Howell sweepstakes next year without trading up.
Right.
And I have a lot of questions about all of the quarterbacks,
Right.
that are coming out in the draft next year. I want to see what Sam Howell does at North Carolina without De'Ami Brown and those 2 running backs. I need to see that film this year. I need to see the same thing from him this year without those 3 game-breaking guys with him on that offense. I think we get a better version, a better look and a better evaluation of Sam Howell. We all look at Malik Willis, the Liberty quarterback. Remember, Stephen Calvert was putting up huge numbers with Antonio Gandy Golden.
Right.
And we're watching Antonio Gandy Golden really struggle to break into that top echelon. I mean, I think a lot of people think De'Ami Brown's already come in and surpassed him. He's probably the at minimum fifth best receiver, if not 6th. I mean, you could argue Dax Milne is probably ahead of him.
He's been getting a lot of run lately. A lot of people have been talking about him.
Yeah, I mean, Milne's a great player. Saw him in person last year when BYU played us at Navy. Saw a lot of his games during the course of last season because BYU was getting a ton of run because they were willing to reschedule games in the middle of a week. Hey, you got an open date on Saturday? Okay, we'll come to you. That everybody was kind of playing football on the fly last year. So we look at the numbers that Malik's putting up at Liberty and with Hugh Freeze, who runs a wide open offense. And we're like, okay, we've seen this. What separates Malik from a Stephen Calvert and seeing what Antonio Gandy Golden did? So I just have too many questions about the quarterbacks that are coming out. So maybe the immediate future is Fitz and Heineke for another season. I mean, I
was going to ask you that. We've talked about this on the show before about how, given these big contracts to teams, even though you want to have that young face of a franchise, it seems to kind of handicap some teams from bringing in more depth and surrounding them with the talent they need to be competitive. A lot of these rookie quarterbacks on these rookie deals is kind of that window. And Washington, almost, if they want to develop a system of either continuing to bring in just a veteran and almost a continual stopgap. I know that's not the franchise. I know that's not going to sell as many jerseys that that people want, but it might be the economical idea, And I know it's not easy to find a guy, but it's a whole heck of a lot easier when you've got a bunch of talent around you. So I'd be interested to see, especially with their cap situation that's going to be coming up in these next couple of years. Are they going to be able to afford to pay somebody an extreme amount, or are they going to try to be more fiscally responsible, with that money?
The tremendous cap situation for them right now. I mean, let's face it, if they're going to make a move, if they're going to, quote, get in the Aaron Rodgers sweepstakes at the end of this year, I think the key there is to get into that sweepstakes. You've got to A, be good, and B, you got to have cap space.
Right.
Aaron's all about the cash. How much money do you have? How much are you willing to give me for this upcoming season? You could continue to plug the gap that way. You could look around the league. Maybe somebody's willing to make a trade. Maybe
Josh Rosen's out there again. Yeah.
Jimmy Garoppolo may be out there at some point.
Yeah.
So that's the ultimate question. Is which way do you go, and how soon do you make that move? From that situation. Otherwise, I think what's happened in football, and we see it in a lot of sports now. There used to be a time where, forever, you'll remember Mark Rippon sat on the bench wearing a sweater for the Redskins for several years before he was finally able to be the quarterback. Those days are gone. We play right now, this season right now. We'll worry about 22 in 2022. We'll worry about 23 in the offseason of 22 and 23. So I think we're playing more of a game like that because we are a win now society. Our fans, teams have realized our fans are all about right now. baseball is maybe the one sport right now where we're seeing supreme tanking taken to a completely, different level by the Orioles. Yep. NBA, you can do it. We've seen teams do it. A very professional job of tanking to eventually get better, like Philadelphia has the last couple of years. In the NFL, the business of the NFL is a 17-week, right now, we want to win this week business. And that's the beauty of the NFL. We only get 17 of these tasty morsels, plus the playoffs every year. So there is no such thing as tanking. We're trying to win every game right now. And I think teams have, really changed their off-season philosophies as a result of it. Right. They're playing for now and not necessarily worried about 3 or 4 years from now.
Well, you brought up Major League Baseball, and I'm going to kind of ask you a couple of Nats questions here. Being a Detroit native, I have a hard time rooting for the O's, so the Nats have been my kind of team to root for, not really cheating on my team. So just a short couple of years ago, we were celebrating a world championship, and now with this past trade deadline, we kind of, put the fork in that whole process. What are your thoughts on how the trade deadline went, and how do you think that's going to affect the rebuilding process as far as which players they got in those deals that will have an impact now and which players might have an impact later on?
Crazy how, again, 2 years ago, and I broadcasted 15 of those games with Charlie on the radio and doing a lot of the post-game shows. To think it was just 2 years ago that we were doing that and celebrating that. But remember, that was an older team. So a lot of things came together for that club, after they went 19-31 to start the year.
They got real hot at the end.
Got very hot at the end. Got fortunate a division that wasn't great. Let's face it. I mean, for all the hullabaloo of Bryce going to Philadelphia for 13 for 333. I mean,
worked out okay. Yeah.
It worked out okay for the Nationals because they were going to play for a World Series, and Bryce's new team wasn't that good. And you saw what Strasburg and Corbin did during their respective postseasons. Both of them were phenomenal in the postseason. Right now, ironically, both of them, one's hurt and the other guy's trying to find what's wrong. And he has no idea because the velocity is still there, but his pitches are all of a sudden very hittable right now. So that's frustrating, certainly, for the team. And when Kyle Schwarber got hurt, I think had Schwarber stayed healthy and they were still close, Mike would have bought, because Mike is one of those guys it's about right now. This season right now, how can we win the most games right now? I think Mike would have bought had they still been 2 or 3 games out. But he saw the writing on the wall, and I think even the learners, to an extent, learned something from the Bryce Harper situation when they did not cut him loose in a trade that allegedly Mike had worked out with the Astros. This time, you had some pieces that were attractive. Already, we've seen Riley Adams against his old team in Toronto with a single and a home run in the same game against his old club. We're watching Lane Thomas, who seemingly that was like a throw-in deal at the end of right at the deadline for John Lester. He had 2 hits in his first game with the Nationals.
I could not believe that Lester got traded for anything. If they would have gotten the bag of balls, I would have been.
Not for a guy like Lane Thomas. You go back and look at Lane Thomas, had a nice little run, brief run for the Cardinals in 19 at the big league level, hit 5 home runs, hit over 300 in that stretch. Got lost like a lot of players did last year during the pandemic. You got to throw that out. But certainly he looked great in his first opportunity. Donovan Casey, who they also got in the Dodgers deal, tore it up at Harrisburg. He's already been promoted now to AAA Rochester. Josiah Gray looks like the real deal.
That's
Ruiz,
what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, I mean, Ruiz looks like, he's the top prospect in the Dodgers system along with Josiah Gray. He looks the part. So to make those deals the way Mike did, he got pieces in return that look like they are going to help you at some point at the big league level. Mike rarely ever gets fleeced in any kind of a deal, just like he fleeced the Padres when he got Turner and Joe Ross to begin with. I thought his work was excellent at the trade deadline. Sure, it sucks to see your favorite players go. A lot of people, including my 13-year-old daughter, hate to see Trey Turner go, but you don't get the Dodgers' top 2 prospects for just Max Scherzer, I don't think. The fact that you were able to throw in Turner in that deal and, look, that's less money you're going to have committed in 25 when Juan Soto finally comes up for the big deal. So we'll see how much that's going to be and for how long.
Are they going to try to sign Soto? I mean, like Harper's coming up, they didn't sign him. Trey Turner was coming up. He's kind of said that he didn't really get a deal. I mean, should we expect anything different?
I think they will they know Scott Boras. They've done plenty of work with the Boras Corporation. I think they understand if Juan continues on the same trajectory in his career, they understand what kind of deal it's going to end up being. I mean, it's going to end up being a Mike Trout type deal. But the key is Turner was going to be 30 when his deal came up. And if they wanted Lindor money, and that's fine, CAA had every right to ask for Lindor money.
Sure.
Because, that's what the market has set itself at.
Right.
But if you give Trey 10 for 341, or even give him, say, 6 for 180, which is 30 million per 32. I mean, we go to 200 million to be 32, 34 million, 35 million, whatever. 35 million be 6 for 210. Okay. When Trey Turner's 35 and 36,
he's not going to be the same speed.
Is he the same player because wheels are his game?
Right.
Is he still going to be the same player? Yes, he does hit for some power, but wheels are his game. So 6 for 210. Is he going to be the same guy at the end of that deal? Are we saying the same thing halfway through the Corbin deal? Would we be saying that in the Turner deal at age 33? Soto's
age
only
33
20...
for Trey Turner. At age 33, he's not making the most amazing slide home like he made last week.
Look,
he might be
Soto's going to be 25. Okay, that's a huge difference. So if you give Juan 10 for 400, that makes all the sense in the world because he'll be with you right through 35. And as long as he doesn't get hurt, again, 10-year deals are crazy. 13, like they gave Harper. Yes, he was youthful enough to get it, but you're tempting so much fate over the course of a long-term deal. Guy, wrecks a knee, just like Bryce did, when he went sliding across the wet base and stuff like that when he stepped at first base. You're just cheating the baseball gods so much with a 10-year deal, but that's what the market will demand. But at age 25, that deal for that player makes a little more sense than a guy whose game is speed. And you're hoping that he's still got the same wheels and the same effect at age 35 and 36 if you were to go 6 for 210 for a guy like Trey Turner. You're not going to give Trey Turner 10 years and $341 million at age 30. That's just not going to happen.
I agree with you as far as signing Soto, whatever he wants, I say give him. He's young enough, like you said, to make that 10-year deal worth it. Now, as far as where do you feel that Strasburg fits into this whole rebuilding process? Are they done with him, or is it worth them to sign him to a couple more years here?
Well, I mean, they've got him under control for a couple more years because of the last extension. I mean, it's $245 million total dollars committed to him. The biggest thing for Steven is, and this is for guys like him who bust their rear end to be good. It matters to Steven Strasburg. He's not doing anything off the field foolishly that's going to cost him, things in his career. He's not going to be getting suspended for anything. That's not him. And to see his body betraying him like this really stinks. I mean, because this is a guy that cares about his craft, is really good at it when he's healthy. And unfortunately, I mean, you think of the things that find him. A guy like in football, a guy that's got a knee injury, that knee's there. That's a constant pain. You're used to that. But, he had carpal tunnel, now the neck. I mean, he's been through the ringer in terms of his body. The question ultimately becomes does he make a career transition like a John Smoltz? And maybe do you try to make him a closer to try and maybe enhance his longevity? I mean, maybe that's something you talk about with him down the road. I think when he first comes back, though, he's still a starter in the rotation and has to be the top of your rotation guy because you don't want Josiah Gray to have that kind of responsibility this early in his career, even though he's shown you some really good stuff here in his first couple of starts up with the Nationals. It would help considerably to have a healthy Steven Strasburg to be able to anchor that rotation in 2022.
All right, awesome. Yeah, there was some stuff I know even when Strasburg was first coming up about having kind of a wonky delivery, and they kind of predicted even back then that he might have some arm troubles. And then it seemed like he kind of was able to work his way through it, especially the World Series year. And then, sadly, they signed him to that big deal. Good for him. I'm happy for him. But it seems like if he was healthy this year, I don't know if he would have been also a trade candidate since they were trying to get rid of everybody. It kind of seemed like, I don't know if they're going to try to, I don't know what the long-term plans are for him. Like you said, moving him to the bullpen eventually. I'm sure plan number one is just to get him healthy. Try to get him
absolutely. I mean, he's got to be the anchor of your 2022 rotation, in my opinion. If not, then Mike's got to go shopping for a top of the rotation starter. And we know, A, those guys aren't out there very long and very often. And B, it usually requires a long-term and a financial commitment, and they've already got a bunch of dollars tied up in Strasburg and Corbin in that rotation right now.
Before we, I know, we're big on the Nats, and we're kind of sad to see them kind of close this window and try to start opening a new one. But one of the teams I want to talk about is actually the team right behind me in Maryland. Maryland football season's coming up. I'm a big Mike Locksley fan. I know that his track record as a head coach hasn't always been flourishing. But I love all the stuff that he's done as far as rebuilding this team. I don't think people remember just how bad it was when the Jordan McNair situation happened, and the tragedy, that his family had to deal with. And there was no better coach on the planet that really could have helped, handle that situation. We've also seen, the facilities grow. He also has his coalition, for finding minority head coaches. He's become a local recruiter, and he really seems to be stepping up the program that needed to step up as they went to the Big Ten. But that being said, it's year 3 now, and the expectations is that this team jumps and they make a move, to kind of get more towards the top of that, the Big Ten. And that just seems still like a really daunting task to me, just considering just the amount of talent that's in there. I know that they finished ahead of a couple schools last year, but now with teams like Indiana and even Rutgers, showing improvement in their systems. What are realistic expectations for Maryland's football team this year? And is it fair to start to criticize Locksley and really start more looking at the wins and losses as opposed to the off-the-field stuff?
I don't think there's any question it's a results-oriented business. Every coach will tell you that. And I think Mike even said that, because I think at Big Ten Media Day, a lot of people were throwing the P word around, potential, and Mike even said, hey, we're beyond that now. We need to – look, I think if you're a Maryland fan – you go back and look at how much they outclassed Penn State last year. Maryland looked like the faster team offensively, defensively. That has to give you tremendous hope, because Mike needed that, because James Franklin was able to go in living rooms and tell kids locally, hey, we just beat them 59-0 in their stadium. So if you're choosing between them and us, you can go play for them. That's fine. But we just beat them 59-0
and Penn State's more
national
of a
TV
program and national power.
No question. But I think if you look at that rebound, that game last year, and anything, look, I throw out anything that happened in 2020.
Sure.
I mean, being on the inside and broadcasting games and knowing what a lot of these kids went through just to play a game last year each week. I don't know if they'll ever undergo a more extraordinary circumstance in their lives. I mean, if you want to talk, you want to find out what kids are all about under adversity, they found out what that was all about last year. And still were able to go to Penn State and play that kind of football game, and I think that's the thing that has to encourage you as a Maryland fan. You have the quarterback. You've all of a sudden become wide receiver you. I mean, they've got 3 guys right now that can play for anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, they got just signed a 4-star guy for next year, and they've got 3 guys right now that can play for anybody in the Big Ten, and that's what Mike promised. Mike promised, I'm going to get you better players here. And we've always known Mike can recruit. You couldn't have picked a better coach after the Jordan McNair situation, as you mentioned, because Mike is one of those guys, just like Ken Niumatalolo at Navy. They wear it on their sleeve, man. He's all about the kids, and
Mike
he's
had to
all
deal
about
with his own family. I mean, he had his own, son.
Absolutely. I mean, Mike's been through tremendous adversity with his own family, and so Mike has the life experiences of coming back from all of this. And look, I don't hold anything that happened at New Mexico against Mike. That's not a great program. It's not a.
I'm glad you said that, because I worried about that. I mean, that was the thing when I initially thought.
Okay, look at the program. I mean, Bob Davies sort of got it going for a year or two with just a sledgehammer option running game, but they've fallen on hard times again. I mean, it's a terrible situation. Mike's got Mike's got tremendous resources here. He's got great familiarity here. If he's ever going to succeed as a head coach, it's going to be right here.
Right.
And, I think being around the Alabama program, you can't help but observe what happens, why that culture is so good.
Standards are, right.
Yeah. So Mike's always been a great recruiter. He's got a tremendous staff. And I think they will take a step this year. And sure, nobody ever expected Tom Allen to do what he did at Indiana. Schiano, did great things at Rutgers the first time around.
Right.
But you're also playing in the same division as Ohio State, But Michigan and Michigan State are not world beaters.
They're
anymore.
not the same teams that I remember growing up with.
No, I mean, Bo Schembechler's not coming through that door. And after we've seen a few things, that have transpired, maybe it's good that he's not coming through that door anymore. But, Jim Harbaugh's got a long way to go to get that program back to compete with the top dog at Ohio State. So, and Ohio State's just gone through a cycle of amazing players there. Let's see what they do now with the next quarterback. Can he play to the same level as the previous guys? I think Ryan Day's a great coach, though. He's going to do a fine job, long term there, I think, at Ohio State. But there's no reason right now that Maryland can't jump up into that conversation with everybody else. Because
that's what we wanted to hear. That's what I was hoping. I'm glad to hear someone, we have zero credibility here. We're just a couple of, guys. I'm glad to hear you say that. It makes me feel a little bit going into this.
I think Ruben Hippolyte's going to be a tremendous player, very gifted player on defense. And losing Chase Campbell to a transfer sucks because, he would have helped that defense. They've got to get better defensively. I'm
surprised by that move, but that almost tells me that he saw the writing on the door as well. That's kind of at least how I felt. I don't know if there was something that transpired in the locker room or something like that.
Well, but let's face it, everybody had to get out of jail free card last year in the transfer portal. So if you were ever going to make a move somewhere else, last year's the year to do it. So, but like I said, I think Ruben's going to be a great building block to help them on the defensive side. They've always been able to find kids in the back end to play in the secondary. But I think offensively they are gifted. And I think they're ready to go attack some people and play some explosive football offensively. And I don't know if some of the offenses in the Big Ten East, other than Ohio State, are ready to play at that level. So you could have some shootouts.
Yeah.
And who gets the ball last maybe wins the game. But, Penn State loses Shaka Toney, who's now playing, for the Washington football team, on the defensive side. So, to me, the number 2 spot behind Ohio State in the East.
Wide
open going into this season. No question.
We've only got a little bit of time left, but I do want to ask you, specifically from Navy, we were just talking about this the other day. How do you like the new uniforms that were presented?
And those Marine Corps uniforms are sharp, my friend. And that's the beauty. Kevin's people at Under Armour, they know the uniform business, man. And
I got that down. Yeah.
there's a tremendous detail to that uniform that if you do it wrong, alienates a lot of the members of the Marine Corps. They would be highly critical of that uniform. So the detail of that uniform is tremendous. It's a shame we're having to commemorate a game on 9/11 in a special way because of that tragedy.
Right.
And marking the 20-year anniversary of that, but certainly doing it in a very respectful way. Obviously, having Navy and Air Force move that game up. Usually it's the first Saturday in October, playing it game 2 this year.
Right.
Certainly a big emotional time for the Mids. But certainly, hey, we got to get by the week before. As you all know, the entire state of West Virginia is going to be here.
If you want to go, Marshall and West WVU coming down.
Right, and they're both games at 3:30. So if you want to go to West Virginia for something,
couches. Yeah.
September 4th is your day. There will be nobody home in the state of West Virginia September 4th because they will all be here in the state of Maryland that day. So,
all right. Before we let you go, we only got about 2 minutes left. We are all fathers here, and our kids are young. But they are just starting to kind of enter the world of sports. My daughter is 5 years old and has just signed up, and I've signed up to coach her T-ball team. And I'm really looking forward to making some good moves out there. But from a sports dad, what advice can you give us before we enter that realm?
It's a great question. Very fortunate. My oldest is an assistant basketball coach at Seton Hill now up in Greensburg, Pennsylvania. My younger son played at UMBC, scored 1,000 points there. And I've got a 13-year-old daughter that plays travel softball now and coached all of them at some point, coached kids that weren't mine at some point. Biggest thing is just remember, you're not playing, they are. I think that's the biggest thing. And, we all have parents that get too excited, as I like to say it. Just be exuberant for the kids. And remember, the hardest thing to remember is we're not playing, they are. Let them enjoy the game, teach them the game. T-ball is T-ball. They're not auditioning to play for the Nats at 5 years old, even though you will have some parents on the team
who believe that,
who believe that and will say, you've got to play Johnny over at second base, or he's got to be over at shortstop. He's the next Trey Turner. You got to play him there. So to me, that would be the biggest advice, is just remember they're playing, not you, and just be organized and enjoy it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for that.
We really appreciate it, Pete. We're about to run out of time and probably get cut off. So I just want to say thank you again so much for coming on and joining us. We really do appreciate your insight. It means the world to us. Like I said, just a couple guys getting together and doing a quick podcast to have someone like you come on and give us a quick chat.
Yeah, thanks, Pete.
Be glad to do it anytime. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Pete.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Have a good night.
All right. Perfect. And I'll cut it out there. Pete, seriously, thank you again so much. I really
thank you so much. Amazing.
That's awesome. Good
Anytime,
stuff.
guys.
Truly amazing. Thank you, sir.
All right. Have a great season, man.
See ya.
It's kind of cool.
That was awesome. I'm
That was
sorry.
really awesome.
What a nice guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely enjoyed that. Like I said, before we get cut off, hey, haven't forgot. Cheers to you guys.